Yay. All right, so here is project 2. And I'm going to screen share my whole screen. Share the sound. Share. All right. Great. So with this project, we continue with finale, and we're going to be working with finale tonight. And then next week, we'll be working with logic. So the idea is this: I'm going to give you a solo piano piece by Satie, very familiar piece. You've probably all heard it. It's from his Gymnopedes. And you'll do an arrangement for 6 to 10 instruments, or a combination of instruments and voice. So you'll get to work on your arranging skills. You'll get to continue your finale skills. And that'll be tonight. It usually takes the first whole night to get the arrangement done. Then it's a 2-week project, so it continues the following week. And you'll do a remix in Logic with that same arrangement. So you'll export a MIDI file and then do a remix. So kind of cool ways of looking at adapting music in different ways. So this is not due until October 3rd, 2-week project. You'll submit a PDF of the score, a WAV file of that same score from finale, and then an MP3 of your remix. So you're looking for three product files. And remember, 20 points for incorrect file format. So make sure you've got your correct file formats in the Blackboard submission. All right, so I have a presentation to give a background on what we're even looking at. There's kind of a lot of components. So the first is this composer and his piece that I chose, this guy, Satie. He was turn of the 20th century, so late 19th, early 20th century composer and pianist. And he really was a guy interested in like just kind of breaking philosophical boundaries, and laid the groundwork for minimalism and really for ambient music in many ways. And he challenged this whole idea of what great music or great art was. And so one of the things he did, not only with music, but he would give his piece really absurd titles. A couple of examples are Peace in the Form of a Pear and Desecrated Embryos, just really, odd titling to sort of challenge people's idea of art. So this piece that you'll be arranging is from a set from his Gymnopedes. And there's some of his best known pieces. And remember that the 19th century was a time when people were doing crazy stuff with piano, right? Just like challenging the limits of piano. And he comes out with this totally anti-virtuosic solo piece. It's just a slow, meditative piece. It doesn't reiterate harmony in the same way. It basically has what we call non-functional harmony. It's like modal harmony that doesn't really go anywhere. And so many ways a precursor to ambient music. So let's take a listen to the Gymnopedy, the solo piano version, give you an idea of, in case you have never heard Satie, what it sounds like. Sound familiar? All right. How many of you have heard that before? Yeah. It's like it's used in commercials. I mean, it's still going strong, something he wrote in 1888. It's kind of funny if you think about it, using this to sell cars or whatever in the 2000s. All right, so I have an example of an orchestration just to give you an idea of what you could do with this, because you might listen to it and be like, whoa, there's nothing going on. How could I ever write a piece with that? And this is Debussy's orchestration that he did in 1897. And this is a full orchestra. So you don't have to do full orchestra, but this is more just like, gives you an idea if you did want to expand it out, what ways you might do it. So this has 2 flutes, oboe, 2 horns, a cymbal. The cymbal part's very interesting. So if you want to watch that line, 2 harps, and then basically your orchestral strings, violins, violas, cellos, and bass. So let's take a little listen to this, give you an idea of what Debussy did. And this one starts over here at 3, around here. Okay. All right, so you'll notice the instrument change there, right? Because if you're thinking, I've never done an arrangement, how do I go about this? You can check out the score and sort of look at the layers of it, just to give you a hint about this right off the bat. Here's my Satie score. Where are you, buddy? Up here quickly so I can do this. Okay, well, we'll just look at it on the here. So we've got a bass line. You can think, okay, bass line. We've got chords in the middle, and we've got a melody on the top. So you can already start to think about layers and different instruments and their ranges that you might want to apply. And there's a PDF of this on Blackboard that you should download and kind of start checking it out. You'll notice what Debussy did is he started with the strings having the melody, and then he gave it to the oboe. So you can even go through in advance and start thinking about what instruments you want to play on which iterations of the melody. So just to give you a little hint with that. And I can help you if you want to talk ideas. All right, one more introductory thing, MIDI. Since we're going to be using MIDI to transform this, to represent the sound, and then also in your remix, I thought I'd just, what the heck is MIDI? Anybody know what MIDI stands for? It's a really exciting acronym. Did somebody say it? Musical, who was that? Is that Lorelei? Lorelei. Musical instrument digital interface. Yeah, there it is. So what is it? It's a digital language used so electronic instrument sounds or samples can communicate with computers and controllers. So think drum machines, keyboards. Essentially our keyboard plugged into the computer is a MIDI controller. And it gives us capabilities to produce and manipulate sounds, basically control every aspect of sound. And one of the first music technologies really was the player piano. And MIDI is a lot like the dots on the paper of everybody know a player piano, like the pianos that play by themselves, and it's really creepy. You might have seen them like in an airport or something. So MIDI is not a sound. MIDI is just the language. It's like the dots on the piano roll of a player piano. So I got a little short thing here about history of MIDI and the player piano. So let me just play this. This video is cool.
The first self-playing piano system was invented around 1895. It sat in front of a regular piano, and the machine's wooden fingers would play the keys. Guiding those fingers was a roll of perforated paper. By the early 20th century, piano companies incorporated the roll mechanism right into the piano itself.
There's your first prototype for MIDI.
The player piano rage petered out around 1930, but there are still plenty of old player pianos around, so there remains a market for the music rolls they play. The original roll-making method used a recording piano. As the musician played, each key would trigger a pneumatic valve, which pressed a corresponding rod against piano roll paper over carbon paper. Then they just perforate the carbon marks. The modern method uses an electronic keyboard and a computer. As the musician plays, the computer converts the notes to data. The musician edits the data, then loads it into a computer that's hooked up to the roll perforator, a machine that produces 18 rolls simultaneously. Like the old recording machine, the roll perforator has a pneumatic valve for each note of the piano keyboard. As the computer activates each note, the corresponding valve triggers a steel punch to descend and pierce a hole in the passing paper. The longer the hole, the longer the note. Most music consists of multi-note chords, so the machine vibrates like crazy, punching many notes simultaneously.
Okay, so you get the idea how that technology works and how it essentially what we're using here, although we don't get to see it because it's all inside the machine. So MIDI is not a sound. MIDI can't communicate audio. So actually the cables we use in the computer, it has to be a different cable for the audio than for MIDI. They can't even go on the same cable. So it's kind of interesting. MIDI doesn't control audio either. So like when we go into Pro Tools and we start working with audio samples, it won't be MIDI anymore. It's kind of interesting. All right, so why do people do this? I think it's because people made all kinds of synthesizers and they needed a common language for all these devices to be able to understand each other. Also, before MIDI, if you wanted a musical passage, like with vinyl, for example, like early phonograph, you had to play it in real time, right? You had to play it perfectly. Now we can control everything, right? If you make a mistake, you can just punch something in and change dynamics, timbre, effects, everything. So Bob Moog, pioneer of the synthesizer, made the first viable synths on the retail market. That's the Moog or Moog, some people say his name, important name in MIDI and synthesizers. So let's go now to our assignment. Here we are, the finale arrangement. And here we go, the requirements. So this is to create an original arrangement of Eric Satie's Gymnopédie. It must be an original arrangement, 6 to 10 parts, 2 treble instruments, so basically 2 melody instruments, 2 chordal instruments, basically any instrument that can play more than 1 note at once. So examples are piano, organ, guitar, your mallet instruments like marimba or vibes, a bass instrument, and at least 1 percussion instrument. So this is just the minimum. You're welcome to do more if you want to start going crazy and add in all kinds of extra stuff. That's cool. Some people do more, some people do the minimum. And you must include at least 1 transposing instrument and not by octave. So like piccolo and guitar transposes by octave, those don't count. It has to be something where they read a note that sounds different than what they call it. So this is clarinet, saxophone, trumpet, horn. And this is just because I want you to have practice putting in transposing instruments and how to manage them, because you can really goof it up, right? If you put in the wrong notes for a clarinetist and then you get to the rehearsal and you're like, oh, right, transposing instruments. I want you to know how to do that. You must arrange the entire piece. So the full number of measures as in the original. Some examples of ensembles, you can go with traditional ones like strings with winds, brass quintet with keyboards. You obviously can do band, choir, voice with instruments, percussion with winds and brass, orchestra. But you can also go through finale and kind of, there's a lot of interesting combination of instruments in there that you can choose. Notice the layers in the piece, melody, bass, chords, talked about that. Notice different statements of the melody, and you can plan ahead. So let me show you a couple of things actually in finale, and then I'm going to let you go ahead. I'm not going to show any of the basic note entry because we did that last class. So I'm going to show you just the extra stuff that you'll need to know for this assignment. For transposing instruments, you'll notice this is a score. This is a submission from a previous student, previous semester. He chose trumpet, oboe, bass clarinet is his transposing instrument. His two chordal instruments were piano and marimba. And then he has double bass, and then his percussion was timpani. So this fulfills all the requirements. Don't copy his, come up with your own, but just to give you an idea of what this score will look like. For transposing instruments, enter your instruments with score view in C. Very important. So you'll go up here because I'm giving you a piano score in C. So you go up to document in the finale menu, display in concert pitch. You'll see that changed my bass clarinet to concert. Now you can enter the same notes on the score that I give you into the part. And then before you would give it to a bass clarinetist, you would turn this off so that the bass clarinetist can read it in their key. So that's how transposition works. So sure to do that. So loading Garriton instruments into the ARIA player, you can use your, your setup wizard to choose your instruments like last time, or you can set up a blank score and you can check out all this stuff by opening up Score Manager. And let's say I change my mind and I want to do something besides oboe. You can change your mind. So just, that's what this part is, kind of instruments. Like, let's say I want to do piccolo there. And what this business here about ARIA player is, you'll notice there's a column for channel. And sometimes the channels get messed up. And so you can go in to MIDI audio, this is part of the directions, audio units, bank and effects. And you're going to click this little pencil. And here you can see where all of the instruments are plugged into the different channels. And if I push right under the number, you'll see there's a little white box. It'll open up. Okay, it'll give me an idea of the range and sound of the instrument. It'll tell me the channels they're into. So you can basically double check how your score is set up with this is basically the player that is handling the MIDI data. So you see, move this over. Here's my score manager with my channels, and here's all of my instruments plugged into the channels. Score views. I showed a couple of this to you last time. There's some shortcuts to enter this differently. If you push Command E, it'll give you what's called the scroll view. It'll just go scrolling forever and ever. I actually prefer to enter in scroll view because I feel like it's faster. I can just keep going. If you push Command E again, it takes you back to score view, which gives you a musical score where you'll see it by page. So Command E, and go back and forth between those views. There's also a studio view, which is Command Shift E. And this is where it opens your mixer, and you can actually adjust the volume of things and the panning in real time. It's very useful when you start putting in a lot of instruments. Sometimes you might have, oh, why is that alto flute so loud? You can turn it down, you can balance your instruments, or sometimes usually the bass needs to be turned up. You can see this, the bass is turned all the way up. So that's studio view. It's very useful. Command plus and command minus are zoom. So I would suggest you use these as well. It's very useful shortcut. When you play back your file, let's just take a listen to this. Sounds pretty much like the original, right? Okay, so that's cool. If you're in scroll view and you want it to start, where you are at in your score, there's an option you can click open. There's a little arrow here in your playbacks. Click leftmost measure. Otherwise, Finale by default always goes all the way back to the beginning. So I usually turn this on when I start a file. I always want it to go leftmost measure so that if I'm in a place, I can start there. So that's how you can turn that on. The two other things that are new this round are how to enter dynamics and how to enter expressions and slurs. So there's a thing called the expression tool. It's the mezzo forte. Just click on that. And let's say I want to put a forte here when the trumpet comes in. You just double click over the note. And there's a bunch of different, options in here, but there's one for dynamics. And I can go pick forte assign. So that's where your dynamics are. And then there's another tool called the Smart Shape tool. I'm going to click on that. And this is your decrescendo, your crescendo, and slurs. Slurs, you double click on a note and drag. Voila. That one takes a little bit of skill with the mouse. You're gonna double click, and do you see how it highlights where I want to go? There you go. That's how you can do your slur. Crescendo and decrescendo is also the same. Double click, hold, and drag, and you can drag it to where you want it. So that's for your dynamic shaping. And what's cool about Finale is the MIDI playback. There's actually MIDI data connected to slurs and crescendos and decrescendos that will actually play all of those in your file. So it's not just for the end, musicians. It's also for the playback responds to it too. All right, questions before I let you go at it. Yes, Paige. Oh, if anybody needs directions on where to get the PDFs, I'll come show you, but it's under assignment 2 in Blackboard. You can just click on them straight away and download them. Lorelai?
So that you've got all those lines.
All the staffs?
Yeah. Sorry.
So you're going to plug your instruments in this setup wizard, and then when you're done, it should just boom, 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 set them all up. And I can help you with that too. If you have to click add instrument in that initial page to get it to all queue up.
Okay.
Got it? Okay. Cool. All right. I'm going to stop the share and we'll go at it.